Johnnie Walker Blue Label costs about $200. No age statement. 40% alcohol by volume. Diageo claims only 1 in every 10,000 casks makes the cut. Sounds exclusive until you realize they move over 22 million cases of Johnnie Walker a year. The bottle is gorgeous. The silk-lined box is gorgeous. The whiskey inside is pleasant, smooth, and completely unremarkable for what it costs. These are 15 bottles that deliver more complexity, more character, and more whiskey for your money. Every single one costs less than Blue Label. Number 15, Naked Malt, around $30 to $35. This is a blended malt from Edrington, the same company that owns Macallan and Highland Park. And those two distilleries are reportedly in the blend, along with Glenrothes. First fill Oloroso sherry cask maturation gives it this creamy, toffee-forward sweetness with sultanas, butterscotch, and a whisper of oak spice on the finish. 40% alcohol by volume, same as Blue Label. The difference is that everything inside this bottle is single malt whiskey from world-class distilleries, not grain spirit stretched thin. For $30, you are drinking Macallan and Highland Park DNA in a bottle that nobody brags about on Instagram. The label says naked malt because the casks have never held whiskey before. First fill means the sherry flavors transfer at full intensity, and that is exactly what you taste. Rich, approachable, and embarrassingly cheap for what it actually is. Number 14, Johnnie Walker Double Black, around $35 to $40. This sits in the same family as Blue Label, and Diageo would probably prefer you skip it entirely and go straight to the $200 bottle. Double Black takes the classic Black Label recipe, which already contains over 40 whiskies, and dials up the smoke with extra peated Islay malts. Then they finish the blend in heavily charred oak casks that add this deep roasted sweetness. The result is richer and bolder than anything Blue Label has ever attempted. 40% blended scotch, same exact category as Blue. Blue Label is smooth the way elevator music is smooth. Double Black is smooth the way a well-built campfire is smooth. It warms you and stays with you. At $35, you could buy 5 bottles of Double Black for the price of 1 Blue Label and have enough scotch for every night of the week for a month. That alone should tell you where the value sits. And this is still the budget end of the list. Number 13. Dewar's 15 The Monarch, around $40 to $50, 15 years old, age stated on the bottle. That single fact already puts it ahead of Blue Label, which refuses to tell you how old anything inside the bottle actually is. Dewar's 15 uses their double-aged process where the component whiskies are blended together, then the entire blend goes back into Royal Brackla oak casks for further maturation. Royal Brackla is one of only 3 distilleries ever granted a royal warrant, the first Scotch to earn that distinction from King William IV in the 1830s. The whiskey itself gives you honey, baked apple, toasted almond, and a finish that lingers longer than bottles, costing 3 times as much. Master blender Stephanie McLeod has won the International Whiskey Competition's Master Blender of the Year award 6 consecutive times, an unprecedented record, and this was her first creation as Master Blender. Age stated, award-winning blender, $40. Blue Label cannot match a single one of those credentials at 5 times the cost. Number 12, Glenfiddich 15 Solera Reserve, around $55 to $65. Glenfiddich runs the only Solera vat in the Scotch industry. They marry whiskey from 3 different cask types, bourbon barrels, New American oak, and Oloroso sherry casks into a massive Oregon pine vat that is never more than half emptied before being refilled with fresh stock. This is the same system used in Spanish sherry production, and it means every bottle carries a thread of liquid that connects back through years of continuous maturation. The result is this layered complexity of honey, cinnamon, dark fruit, and marzipan that you genuinely cannot get from any other production method in Scotch. 40% alcohol by volume, single malt, and the Solera system ensure a consistency that most distilleries can only dream of. At $60, you are paying for actual engineering. At $200 for Blue Label, you are paying for a story about craftsmanship that the bottle itself does not back up. Glenfiddich has been family-owned since William Grant founded it in 1887, and they have never needed a luxury box to sell their whiskey. The liquid does the work. Number 11. Monkey Shoulder, around $30 to $35. 3 Speyside single malts blended together. Originally Glenfiddich, Balvenie and Kinninvie, though William Grant & Sons has since expanded its malt portfolio. That is serious distillery pedigree in a $30 bottle. The name comes from the old malt men who used to turn barley by hand on the malting floor. After long shifts, their arms would hang limp at their sides like a monkey. 43% alcohol by volume, which already beats Blue Label's bottling strength. Smooth, vanilla-forward, approachable, with orange peel, a biscuity malt backbone, and just enough spice to remind you this is scotch and not flavoured water. Monkey Shoulder is the bartender's favourite scotch for a reason. It works neat, on ice, in cocktails, in a highball with ginger ale, on a Tuesday afternoon when nobody is watching. It never makes you feel like you overpaid. William Grant & Sons created this blend specifically for the cocktail market, but neat drinkers discovered it and never went back. At $30, it leaves you $170 to spend on something else, like 4 more bottles of Monkey Shoulder, or 1 bottle of Blue Label that does less in a glass than any of them. And now we are getting into the range where every bottle on this list starts putting serious distance between itself and Blue Label. Number 10. Aberlour Abunad, around $80 to $100. This is where the conversation gets serious. Abunad means the original in Gaelic, and the whiskey earns the name. It is exclusively matured in first fill Oloroso sherry butts sourced directly from Jerez in southern Spain. It is bottled at cask strength, which typically lands between 59 and 61% alcohol by volume depending on the batch. Non-chill filtered, natural colour. Every batch is unique, numbered and released in limited runs going back to batch 1 in 1997. You are getting dark chocolate, candied orange, dried fruit, Christmas cake richness at a concentration that Blue Label would never dare attempt. Add a few drops of water and the complexity unfolds for 20 minutes in the glass. Aberlour has been making whiskey since 1879, and the Abunad is their statement of intent. 1 bottle of this delivers more drinking experience than 2 bottles of Blue Label combined. The price per sip is not even close when you factor in the strength. A single pour of Abunad at cask strength contains roughly 50% more alcohol than the same pour of Blue Label, which means you are getting significantly more whiskey per glass even before you consider the flavour difference. Number 9. Glenmorangie 18 Extremely Rare, around $85 to $100, 18 years old, age stated. Matured primarily in former bourbon casks, then finished in Oloroso sherry casks for a final period that adds depth without overwhelming the base spirit. Glenmorangie operates the tallest stills in Scotland, over 5 meters high. That height strips out heavier oils and fusel alcohols during distillation. The result is an exceptionally clean, elegant spirit that Dr. Bill Lumsden, their director of whiskey creation and one of the most decorated figures in the industry, has spent decades perfecting. The 18 is floral, honeyed, with dried apricot, a gentle oakiness, and a vanilla cream sweetness that whispers rather than shouts. 43%. If Blue Label is the whiskey equivalent of a luxury hotel lobby, pleasant but forgettable, Glenmorangie 18 is the penthouse suite upstairs. More refined, more personal, and considerably less interested in impressing strangers. It is the kind of whiskey that does not need a silk-lined box to prove it belongs in your glass. Number 8. Highland Park 12 Viking Honor, around $45 to $55. Highland Park sits on Orkney, north of the Scottish mainland, where they still use hand-turned, floor-malted barley and peat cut from Hobbister Moor, a heather-rich peat that gives a gentler, more aromatic smoke than anything you find on Islay. The 12 delivers heather honey, gentle wood smoke, dried fruit, and a salty maritime note that you simply cannot replicate anywhere else on Earth. Matured in sherry-seasoned European and American oak casks. 40%. F. Paul Packalt named Highland Park the best spirit in the world in his Spirit Journal. Not the best scotch, the best spirit. Period. For $50, you are getting a whiskey that professional critics rank higher than expressions costing 4 times as much. Blue Label is one of those expressions, and unlike Blue Label, Highland Park tells you exactly what you are getting. No mystery, no marketing fog, just an honest distillery doing honest work on a windswept island in the North Atlantic. If you want to know what $200 of Blue Label tastes like compared to $50 of Highland Park 12, pour them side by side. The answer will save you $150 for the rest of your life. If you're watching this far, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from and what your go-to whiskey or rum is right now. I read every single comment, and the recommendations in this community are half the reason this channel exists. Over 80% of the people watching right now have not subscribed yet. If you care about drinking better whiskey without paying the luxury tax, subscribe. I cover breakdowns like this one every week. Number 7. Johnnie Walker 18. Around $70 to $90. Same brand, same blending team, same Diageo umbrella, and less than half the price. The 18 carries an age statement, meaning every component whiskey in this bottle has spent at least 18 years maturing in oak. Blue Label will not even tell you what its youngest component is. Some insiders estimate there are whiskies as young as 5 or 6 years old in the Blue Label blend, stretched out by older stock to smooth over the rough edges. JW18 gives you vanilla, dark chocolate, gentle smoke, and orange zest, with a richness that Blue Label approaches but never quite reaches, because Blue plays everything safe. The 18 is the bottle the Diageo blending team actually respects. At $80, it makes Blue Label's existence feel like a branding exercise. And here is something worth knowing. Diageo discontinued Green Label once, then brought it back because demand from whiskey enthusiasts was too loud to ignore. They have never had that problem with Blue Label because the people buying Blue Label are not whiskey enthusiasts. They are gift buyers. Number 6. Talisker 10, around $45 to $55. If Blue Label's smoothness bores you and you have been wondering what scotch with actual character tastes like, this is the answer. Talisker is the only distillery on the Isle of Skye, operating since 1830, and the 10-year-old hits you with black pepper, sea salt, wood smoke, and a citrus brightness that feels like standing on a cliff above the Atlantic in a rainstorm. 45.8% alcohol by volume, bottled higher than Blue Label because Talisker respects the spirit enough not to water it down for mass appeal. Robert Louis Stevenson called Talisker the king of drinks, and nearly 200 years later, nobody has successfully argued against him. Rough, honest, completely unforgettable. This is what scotch tastes like before marketing departments get involved. Number 5. Glendronach 18 Allardyce, around $150 to $170. Still cheaper than Blue Label, and the quality gap is embarrassing. Named after James Allardyce, who founded the distillery in 1826, the Allardyce is matured for 18 years exclusively in Oloroso sherry casks. 46% alcohol by volume, non-chill filtered, natural colour. The result is dates, figs, dark chocolate, orange peel, and a finish that goes on for minutes rather than seconds. Reviewers on WhiskeyBase consistently rate it above 90 points, and it routinely appears on best of lists for sherry-matured scotch, alongside bottles costing $500 and more. At $160, you are still spending less than Blue Label, and you are getting a single malt with an actual age statement, higher alcohol by volume, no chill filtration, and natural colour. Blue Label offers none of those things, not one. The Allardyce is whiskey made for people who drink whiskey. Blue Label is whiskey made for people who buy whiskey as furniture. Number 4. Bunnahabhain 18, around $100 to $120. Bunnahabhain sits on the northeast coast of Islay, and it is the island's unpeated outlier, which surprises everyone who assumes every Islay whiskey tastes like a campfire. The 18 is all about sherry cask elegance. Dried fruit, toffee, walnuts, sea salt, and a maritime character that ties everything together. 46.3%, non-chill filtered, natural colour. Bunnahabhain has won the International Spirits Challenge Trophy for Best Single Malt multiple times. At $100, this delivers everything Blue Label promises and several things Blue Label physically cannot, including an 18-year age statement, higher proof, and the kind of transparency that a luxury brand should offer, but doesn't. The distillery even prints the cask type on the label. Blue Label prints a speech about craftsmanship. If that does not tell you everything about the difference, the next three will. Number 3, Clinalish 14, around $50 to $65. The whiskey industry's best kept secret, and the professionals know it. Clinalish 14 is a key component inside Johnnie Walker Gold Label Reserve, meaning Diageo already trusts this distillery enough to build their luxury blends around it. You can buy the single malt directly for a third of what you would pay for the blend that contains it. It has a waxy texture that coats the palate, notes of tropical fruit, gentle smoke, honey, and a coastal minerality that is completely unique in Scotch. 46% alcohol by volume. Whiskey writers have called Clinalish liquid gold for decades because it delivers a richness that normally costs triple digits in a bottle that barely advertises its own existence. At $60, this is what happens when a distillery puts everything into the liquid and nothing into the packaging. Blue Label is the opposite equation. Number 2, Compass Box, the Peat Monster, around $50 to $60. John Glazer left his position as global marketing director at Johnnie Walker to start Compass Box in 2000 because he believed blended Scotch could be made with more care than the big companies were willing to invest. He founded Compass Box in 2000, and the Peat Monster is one of his signature expressions. This is a blended malt using a heavily peated Islay and Highland single malts married in custom French oak, 46%, non-chill filtered natural colour. The peat is intense but controlled, layered with vanilla, tropical fruit, and a dark chocolate sweetness that balances the smoke rather than burying everything under it. Compass Box publishes the exact recipe of every bottle on their website because they have nothing to hide. Blue Label will not even tell you which distilleries are in the blend. For $60, you get transparency, integrity, and a whiskey made by someone who quit the Johnnie Walker machine because he knew it could be done better. Number 1, Johnnie Walker Green Label, $50 to $60. The single greatest value in Scotch whiskey, sitting on the same shelf as Blue Label, made by the same company, for a quarter of the price. Green Label is a blended malt, meaning it contains only single malt whiskies, no grain spirit, from 4 specific distilleries. Talisker brings maritime smoke and black pepper. Linkwood brings honey sweetness and floral elegance. Cragganmore brings dry spice and complexity. Cale Ela brings coastal peat and iodine. 15-year age statement, which means every single malt in this bottle is at least 15 years old. 43%. Pour Blue Label and Green Label side by side in unmarked glasses. Ask 10 people which is the more complex, more interesting whiskey. The majority pick Green Label every time. The reason is simple. Green Label is built for flavor. Blue Label is built for gift wrapping. One is designed to be drunk, the other is designed to be photographed. At $60, Green Label does not just beat Blue Label. It makes you question whether Blue Label should exist at all. And the irony is that Green Label barely gets shelf space in most liquor stores, while Blue Label sits in a locked cabinet like it is made of gold. The locked cabinet is the point. Blue Label is not sold on taste. It is sold on presentation. Green Label is sold on what is inside the glass. The 15 bottles on this list total roughly $1,200 combined. That is the price of 6 bottles of Blue Label. $1,200 gets you 15 distinct expressions from 8 different regions, 5 different cask types, age statements ranging from 10 to 18 years, and bottling strengths that actually respect the whiskey inside the glass. Or you could buy 6 identical bottles of smooth, safe, pleasant Blue Label and line them up on a bar cart for people who will never open them. Your shelf, your call. If this changed how you think about Scotch pricing, subscribe. More breakdowns like this one are already in the pipeline. Drop a comment and tell me which bottle on this list you are trying first.